This is Tanya Pearson interviewing Brenda Lee on May 9th, 2018 in Nashville, Tennessee for the Women of Rock Oral History Project. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I forgot to tell you that my middle name is Lee too.
Wow.
Yeah, L-E. So it
cool.
has something to do with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank your mother.
So this is a full personal and professional biography.
Uh-huh.
We start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Georgia in a little town called Lithonia, and there was a little town near it called Conyers. So between the two, I kind of grew up. I really grew up all over Georgia because in the South, if you were poor like we were, when you found you had no place to stay, you went to a relative's. So wherever the relative was that was willing to take you in, that's where you went. So all over Georgia, and proud of it.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was a carpenter. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I had two siblings, a brother and a sister, an older sister, a younger brother. My dad passed away when I was not quite 7. And my mother started working 14 hours, 16 hours a day almost in a cotton mill. And before that, I had sung a little, and I always loved to sing. But I won a contest to be on a TV show. And I started traveling with the band called John Farmer and the TV Ranch Boys out of Atlanta, Georgia, on WAGA TV, which is still there. And that was the first money I ever made. Was not much. I think my first gig was $20. But even at that young age, I saw that helped our life. It put some food on the table. It helped. And I loved it. So it was always a joy for me to sing, and to know that it was helping my family too was wonderful. Because it hurt me to see my mother working so hard.
How old were you then?
When I started doing that?
Yeah.
7, 6,
okay.
Somewhere along in there.
I read somewhere that you before that you started singing. I might be wrong. Was that church? You went to Baptist church?
I did. Baptist church, East Lithonia, in a little town called Lithonia, Georgia. And I started singing in church. And then I traveled with a group called the Master Workers Quartet, gospel group. And that's kind of how it started. And then I was seen by the person from the TV show that said, how would you like to come and make a performance? I did. They got a lot of mail. I became a regular, and that's how that all started.
And before your father passed away and before the TV show, what was your relationship like with your siblings and your parents? Did you all get along well? Was creativity, encouraged?
Oh, no. We were a very close-knit, loving family. As not that it was just Southern people that it was that way, but when you find yourself in poverty and everybody around you is in the same boat, you become close because you hang on to each other because you're all you got. And I think that's why the ties are so deep sometimes in the South with relatives, because they've been through it and come through the darkness sometimes, still standing, and we appreciate it.
And so you went to school.
Uh-huh.
What kind of student were you? A good student? Did you enjoy school?
I loved school, and I was a good student, but I was a tomboy. So I would come home. My grandmother made our clothes out of feed sacks, because back then the flour feed sacks were beautiful. And my grandmother would make our dresses. My mother would get us ready for school every morning. My sister would come home looking as pristine as she left. I would come home with my sashes torn out of my dress, my shoes all scuffed up because I'd climb the trees with the boys and do everything the boys did. I was a tomboy.
I did not know that.
I was.
And I wouldn't have guessed that.
I was.
What were some of your major musical influences, like when you were very young, around that age?
Well, without knowing it, when I was little, my mother would sing me to sleep. My mother was a pretty darn good singer. And I didn't know the songs, but I knew I loved the songs. So I would sing the songs. And when I got old enough to say, Mom, what songs were those? She told me they were Hank Williams songs. So I cut my teeth on Mr. Hank, his songs.
Okay, yeah, I think you answered a lot of the questions that I had, like, within other questions. So
Oh, okay.
checking them off
I'm
as I
bad
go
at that.
along. Oh, no, it's great, yeah, because then I don't have to talk as much.
Oh, okay.
But can you talk about how your role kind of changed when your father passed away? It seemed like you had a lot more responsibility to sort of, like, provide.
I did, but I didn't know it.
Okay.
And I never felt the weight of any of that on my shoulders or my heart or my mind. All I knew is I was getting to sing, and that's what I love to do. And if it made money and it helped us, yay. So it wasn't a chore for me. Nobody said, Brenda, you've got to go and you've got to perform this weekend and you've got 6 shows and blah, blah, whatever. Nobody ever did that. It was always my choice.
And then how did you land jobs like the Jimmy Skinner's record shop? Mm-hmm. And did you have a manager way back then, or did you do all this yourself?
I guess my mom did. Now, the Jimmy Skinner record shop was later on in my life out of Cincinnati. I did do it was called the Brenda Lee Record Shop. It was on Main Street in Augusta, Georgia, where we lived. And there was a DJ called Peanuts Faircloth who was about my height. Mm-hmm. And he would take the famous Bell Auditorium, of course, is in Augusta. And no matter who came to town, here, Peanuts. Here's a little girl, she can really sing. Please listen to her. And most of them did. But Mr. Foley came to town, Red Foley. And he let me sing a song on the show. And at that point, he had the first network country television show, and it was called the Ozark Jubilee from Springfield, Missouri. He asked me if I'd like to come back and do the Jubilee. And of course, we just chomping at the bit. We said, absolutely. So for a year or more, we took the Greyhound bus after school on Friday, rode all night long, got to Missouri, did the show. It was live, got back on the bus, rode all day long Sunday, got in school Monday morning, and, did that. The schooling was very important to my mother. And we did that, I don't know, maybe a year or so, and then we moved to Springfield, and I became a regular.
Okay. Who did you travel with back then?
My mom.
Oh, your mom did go.
Always my mom.
Okay.
And my siblings were taken care of by my mom's sister.
Okay.
And, Mom couldn't be in 2 places at one time, and we had no means of support. And that's just the way it was.
Okay, like you just did, if there's anything major that I'm skipping over, because there's so much. I mean,
Yeah.
I try to do things kind of chronologically. It
Yeah,
doesn't always
absolutely.
work out that way. How did you land your first recording contract? Was it at Decca or with Decca?
Yeah. Well, Red Foley, who had the Ozark Jubilee, was on Decca Records.
Okay.
I think he was pretty, and his manager, Dub Albritton, became my manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how all that happened. It was very pivotal. And I moved to Nashville and met Owen Bradley. Well, at first it was Paul Cohen, and then Owen was his sidekick, second in command. And Paul retired, and Owen took me over, and the rest is history. He was just, golly, we credit Owen and Chet Atkins with whatever people think is the Nashville sound.
Mm.
They are responsible for it.
And you mentioned before the interview that you went to the Hollywood Professional School.
I did.
Because I actually didn't realize that you had moved around so much in those first years.
Uh-huh.
When did you eventually move to Los Angeles?
I went to Los Angeles in, what grade was I in? Because I went out, Colonel Tom and my manager were friends. Colonel Tom wanted me to do movies. I just really was not interested in movies, but we moved out there for a year to explore that possibility. I did do one, did not like it, came back to Tennessee, and that's when I went to Hollywood Professional School.
What movie was it so I can watch it?
It was called The Two Little Bears.
Okay.
It's a cute little movie, but as you will see, actress, I am not. Give me a song to sing,
great.
I'm okay. But I can't emote to a little red light. No way.
Well, I wanted to ask what your high school experience was like once you started becoming successful. I would imagine that fame today is very different than, what fame was like back then. But what was it like being a high school student?
It was great. It was great. I mean, my best friend, one of my best friends was Rita Coolidge. Rita went to high school, and at that time she wasn't, she was singing, but not like later on. Kay Smith, who is still my dear friend, she heads up Source here in Nashville, and it was great. I loved riding the school bus. I loved the whole experience of public schools. And just like when Leanne Rhymes' mother came to me and we talked about Leanne and all, and I said, let her be a kid. Let her go to school. She can do it both. She's good. She's going to be around. It's not going to fade. Because she did. And she turned out pretty darn good, I think. So it's possible to do it both. Yeah, you got to give up a few things here and there, but got to get your education. Mm-hmm. And you got to be with kids your own age. And all that other will come. If you're talented, it'll come. Doesn't have to be done when you're 13, 12, whatever, 14. It'll come.
Yep. And could you just kind of talk about your trajectory to critical and kind of commercial success in the early 60s?
I don't know how that happened. The only thing that I can attribute that to was good songs. The A-team of musicians that I had, which included people like Floyd Kramer and Boots Randolph and Hank Garland and Harold Bradley and Bobby Moore and Buddy Harman and Ray Eddington and the Anita Kerr singers and Owen Bradley producing and Selby Cofine at the controls, and it was just all Britton Banks and the strings. It was just all a group thing. It just was never me. It was everybody contributing. And so I never say I did that. We did it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just blessed that they took an 11-year-old seriously. You know? And they always did. They always treated me like they would have treated an adult. And because I can't read music, I can play piano, not great, but I can. But I know music. I hear it and I know what I want. And they respected that. They always respected my input. And for that, I loved them.
I did want to ask about had you ever been like trained or?
I was taken to get vocal lessons, and thank God the vocal coach said that just get in her way. She's fine. Don't mess with her. She's okay. I did take breathing lessons, and I did take things like that to preserve the chords, but never vocal.
Oh, wow.
Mm-mm. That's just a God-given thing.
Yeah, nice gift.
He's the best teacher.
Yeah, well, this kind of goes into this question. So, you have mentioned in previous interviews the kind of camaraderie that existed between musicians and record labels and executives. I have a quote, you said, they built careers, taught you things, and believed in you. And you talk a lot about your fellow female performers and how you all supported each other and were friends and there wasn't really any competition. The music industry since then has just completely changed.
Yes.
Is this change noticeable to you, and was your experience at that time in the early 60s, it was generally positive?
My experience was positive because we were all, especially in the rock movement, that was a whole new thing that we were all novices at. So we were all trying to buoy each other up and say, hey, this is, but the only thing that bothers me today, maybe about the young people in the industry, is either they don't care or they just haven't made it their mission or whatever to find out who came before them and who opened the doors for them. That upsets me. Not because I'm maybe in that group, but I learned so much from that experience. And I just think it's just a treasure trove of wealth that they could learn about the women. I speak for the women, not the men. About the women that opened those doors or kicked down those doors for them to come through. The same way in what you do. The women that made the inroads for you to be acceptable, to do your job. And I just think that's a missing piece of the puzzle today.
I agree, Brenda Lee.
Oh my gosh. And it hurts me. It doesn't upset me. It hurts me because I knew who Peggy Lee was. I knew who Ella Fitzgerald was. I knew all those people. I made it my business to know. Even though I was in the rock field, back in the day, you competed with them too. So you had to know. The 1 year in 69, I was nominated for a Grammy, and I was up against Peggy Lee. Well, I knew out of the bat, well, girl, you might as well just take your seat because you ain't winning. And I didn't. But I was so proud to be in that company, to be recognized with that name. I mean, how good does it get? And I think maybe the kids of today maybe need to go back and look a little bit.
No, they have the internet too. It's so much easier.
Yes.
You just put something in Google.
Yes, absolutely. You do.
I'm just so glad that you said all that, because I say it all the time, but nobody cares. But
No, and
Brenda Lee said it.
and I feel like that too. I feel like, well, it's a different world today. I get it. I absolutely get it. But these are the people that knock down the doors for me to do what I do. And do I honor that? Hell yes, I do. Excuse me. And it aggravates me that sometimes they think, oh, it's all me. I did it, I'm so talented. I did it. Well, yeah, you're talented. But you could probably go down Broadway, pick out 10 girls, and probably 9 of them can sing great. There's a lot of talented people out there that the only thing different is they don't get the break. And when you get the break and when you get the chance, be grateful for it. Because it's not all you, it never is. And Owen Bradley once told me something I'll never forget. He said, Brenda, you're not always going to be everybody's darling. And you're not always going to be number one. That's why there's numbers underneath it. And he's right. And he was right. So you've got to find your niche and make yourself comfortable with it. And if you can't, then you're doing the wrong thing. I don't care what industry you're in.
While we're still kind of talking about the industry, I've read a lot of different things about your manager, Dub Albritton.
Dub Albritton.
Albritton. Well, I guess I'll just ask, what was your relationship like with him? Because I've read things that he was like domineering and like a father, like made you do things or sing certain songs.
In the best kind of way. Dub took me over when I was 10 years old. So yeah, he was like my daddy. And he had a vision for me that was fulfilled, and I wouldn't be sitting here with you talking to me today if it weren't for Dub. He was like my dad, and between his expertise and his vision, Dick Barstow, whom we talked about, Red Foley, Perry Como, Steve Allen, the people really in the early years that really looked at a little girl and saw something further than just a little girl. I can't ever. There are no words to thank them. No words. Because kids' voices change. Sometimes kids' parents are hard to deal with. They don't want to deal. And for them to just say, okay, we believe in this child and we're working with her. And with Dub, it was mostly gratis because I didn't make any money for a long time.
When did you start making money?
Good money?
Yeah.
After I'm sorry.
Oh.
So, yeah. I mean, Dub mortgaged his home to give me a break here in Nashville. So, when you get somebody like that believes in you, you're going to work your butt off to make it happen. And that's what I did. And I did it because I loved it. Nobody made me work. I could have stopped at any time. And my mama would have said, leave her alone. She doesn't want to work. She's okay. It's fine. And And we did that in a lot of instances because I went to public school. I went to public high school. You know, I had the best of both worlds. I truly did. And I credit that with being as sane as I am. You know, what is sane? Who knows? But, yeah, I grew up with a lot of kids when I went to school in California that were used and abused and not fair. And I didn't go down that road. And thank you, Jesus, that I didn't.
From a young age, did you have a say in the songs that you performed?
Always.
And like your kind of your image. You've mentioned a lot that you avoided being like sexualized or pretty much doing anything that you didn't feel comfortable doing, and you had this great support system. How do you decide that that you want to sing or perform a song?
Well, Owen once told me something. He said, Brenda, and we listened to everything together. He'd say, be careful of what you choose. Don't prostitute yourself to choose a song that you think commercially is going to be a hit. Especially if you're not crazy about it, because if it is a hit, you're going to be singing it the rest of your life. So be careful of your choices. So that's kind of how we dealt with songs. We listened to them together, and we chose them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times songs would come in with just a vocal guitar. Well, Owen could always hear it because he was a orchestra guy. He could hear things in his head that I couldn't. But I was a lyric girl. So if the lyric was great, I'm on top of it. And we just, like I said, we were blessed with great, great songs that have withstood the test of time.
Did you know what you were singing about when you were really young?
No.
I mean,
okay. And people ask me that because I was singing all those unrequited love songs. I never had a date. Yeah. I never kissed a boy. I didn't know what I was, but I loved the lyric. And I felt the emotion and the hurt and the longing and the sorrow. I don't know how, but I did. And I think that's what a songwriter hopes a singer will do, is feel the emotion that they wrote it with. So I always tried to live my songs, whether I'd lived it or not.
Oh, I did have one more question about Dub. I read that, and this might be wrong too, but he wasn't a fan of rock music and wanted you to kind of like sing more standards.
Yes.
Like
he wanted me to be, he wanted to work me into being, not a chanteuse, but the nightclub type performer and move me over, which we did. We had that world too. Because I think he saw, well, you know, this rock thing's not going to last forever. Need to move. She's good. We need to move her over. Okay. That was his vision. And it worked.
Interesting.
So I guess I was in the rockabilly field, the rock and roll field, the pop field, the rockabilly field, the country field. So he was right.
Yeah.
And you know, if a song's good, a song is everything. So that's how we've always felt, Owen and I felt.
And again, I don't want to get like doom and gloom.
No.
I read this quote. I think this might have been from Rolling Stone. I can't remember. But you said, you think that it would have changed some as the first rocker girl. You say that you experienced some double standards, that it was hard being a girl back then. And back in my day, boys didn't buy records. Because you seem to have had like a really positive experience with the people that you worked with and with the job itself. What were some of the double standards that you were referring to?
Well, guys always headline shows. Girls hardly ever headlined a show because girls bought records. And my saving grace was, I think, the girls. I was like, hey, she's not a threat to us. She's one of us. She's somebody we can go cry to and say, my boyfriend's left me. What do I do? I wasn't the pretty girl. I wasn't the Annette Funicello. I wasn't the girl with the out to here and boom, boom, boom. I was 4'9" and overweight, and I was the girl you came and cried to and said, why doesn't my boyfriend like me anymore? And I loved that role because that was really who I was. I had my first single date with my husband, so I wasn't your beauty queen or any of that stuff. I was just who I was. And I think girls like that because finally there was somebody maybe they could identify with, that they could say, hey, she's like me. She just sings. That's all. And I wasn't a threat to them. And God love them. They just took me under their wing, and here I am today. And I love them for it.
How often did you work and perform?
Back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day.
Wow. Nonstop.
Yeah.
Nonstop. All
What
the
did
time.
you enjoy most about it? Because you said that it was always fun.
It was. I loved performing. That's what I enjoyed most. Now the traveling was arduous because we went overseas a lot. And we would tour overseas and we'd be gone, and then we'd do a 6-week tour of Japan, working every night, 2 shows a night. Then you'd get on a plane, you'd lose a day, you lose a day, gain a day, whatever it was. You would land, and then I'd open up the very next night for 3 weeks in Reno, Nevada. So it was just nonstop. You can do that when you're young.
I read something really funny. You said someone asked you if you ever got jet lag when you flew to Japan, but you didn't know what jet lag was. So you were like,
No, I said,
I don't think so.
no,
And
they said you never got jet lag. I said, nobody told me I was supposed to.
No, and how true is that, though? If you don't know that something exists, then you just, do what you
Exactly,
have to do.
And we'd get in after that long plane trip sometime from Japan, and we'd get in I don't know, and very seldom did my husband travel with me, but when he did, he'd be walking the streets of Tokyo at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be snoozing because nobody said I was supposed to be tired, so go to bed. I don't care if it's light outside or what. It's time to go to bed.
What were audiences like outside of the U.S.? You were really popular in Japan and in Europe?
Well, I got my start in Europe before I got it here, much like Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And I sang in all their languages. I recorded in their languages. I had hits also in my language. It was great. Absolutely. Toured all of South America, all of Japan, all of Europe, everywhere, and loved it.
In that time, the Silver Beatles opened for you?
The Silver Beatles were my opener, yes. And they were precious. And I knew they were going to be huge. You heard it, you saw it, the songs they were singing you never heard before, you didn't know where they came from, you wished you had them. I got very friendly with John, and he told me, I asked him one night, I said, John, where do you get those songs? And he very nonchalantly, he said, oh, we write them. I'm like, my Lord. And their inspiration, I said, well, who do you listen to? They loved the Everly Brothers. They loved Muddy Waters. They love Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who just was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Hey. And yay, Nina Simone. All the girls in the rock. And those were their influences, Little Richard. And you can hear it in their harmony if you listen.
And you, too.
Yeah, but they, just those songs they were singing, I'd never heard. Well, America never heard anything like that.
Yeah.
And they wrote them. And you're like, good Lord. So I said, okay. And they were dressing like the Teddy Boys then in England. And I said, I need a picture. Can I tape a little thing of the show? Brought it back to my label, played it for them, showed them the picture. They hesitated a minute. And this was in 62, I think, somewhere along there. They said, this look will never happen, nor will this sound. It wasn't a year later before I Want to Hold Your Hand came out. And of course, the rest is history. It changed the tapestry of our music, the music world, everything. Yeah. So I said, na 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 na.
As you became more successful, did people's expectations of you change, or did your expectations for yourself change? Did you plan to do music forever? Did you have other things because you were so young, did you have other things that you wanted to do or accomplish?
No, I always loved music. I always wanted to be a part of music, but I always wanted a home like all girls do, with that white picket fence and children and all of that. And I've been able to do both without harming my family or my children or my husband. And I've had the best of both worlds. The fans out there have allowed me to have a life that I could never thank them enough for. And it's been great.
We're at this question. When and how did you meet your husband, who was also your first date?
Yeah. Rita Coolidge and I went to the old Nashville Fairgrounds Coliseum, which has since burned down, to see Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson was one of my favorite singers at that time. And we went. I was 17. And I don't know, we're looking at the show. I look across the aisle, and here sits this guy, and I thought, he's cute. And I said, Rita, look at that guy over there. Do you know him? Because all us teenagers knew each other. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, I don't know him. I said, okay. I said, take him this note. She said, are you kidding? I said, no, I'm not kidding. I want you to take him this note. I'd never done anything like that in my life. My mother would have had a heart attack. And in it, I just wrote, I think you're cute. My name's Brenda. Call me. Put my number. My mother would have killed me. And I didn't hear anything for like 2 or 3 months. And finally he called.
2 or 3 months?
Yes, absolutely. And finally he called. And we dated. I'm trying to think of how long. Not very long. And I went to Europe for like 2 months. And I thought, well, that'll be the end of that. And we wrote back and forth. And at the end of each letter, he would say, how would you like to get engaged? And then he'd say, P.S., just kidding about that. So when I got back home, he gave me an engagement ring. And I carried it around in my purse for several months. Because I knew, well, I had the #1 record in the world, which was All Alone Am I. I knew if I said to my manager, well, anybody, look, I'm going to get married, they would have had a child. They would have, I mean, that just wasn't going to happen. So I thought, okay, well, this is not going to work. If I had it to do over again, would not do it. Girls, don't do it. Don't elope. Tell your mama. Let her come. I wouldn't do it to my mama because she was so good to me. But I knew that was the only way that we would be married. So we eloped and we got married. And we just celebrated our 54th wedding anniversary. So there you have it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Was your mom upset or was she okay? Did she understand?
No, she was okay with it. She did understand. And she was upset. But she was fine. And I think any mother would have been. You know, Southern women especially are very, go by the, you know, the rules and you know, and I didn't. And that upset her. And I'm sorry to this day about that. But they got to be really good friends. And she knew that he was good for me and he wasn't going to take advantage of me. And so it all worked out.
And he's very good looking.
Yes,
So-
and he's a good man.
Yeah.
He's a good man. And he had his own career, and he wasn't in the music industry. And that's what I was looking for.
He's a football player.
He did play football, but he was a general contractor, a builder. And I wanted somebody with their own career, not with the same career I had. Because I don't have an ego, but it's hard in the entertainment world for both of you to be doing the same thing. Unless you're like Faith and Tim and you do it together. Because you're always apart, you're always separated, you're always going, one's here, one's there. And it's hard to make anything work. I don't care what career you're in if you're not together.
When you first got married, did you think at all about like the effect that like being married would have on your career? Did you ever consider not working or slowing down once you got married?
No, I never thought about what it would do to my career because my fan base was so different. They were like me. I just sang. That was the only difference. They wanted families. They had the same dreams I had, and they were all for it. Yay! And I never thought about it hindering my career. And it didn't. I don't know why, because in some instances it does. But I never, like I said, I never was like the sex symbol or the this or that. I was like the girl next door. You cried on her shoulder and said, he doesn't like me anymore. What can I do? And I was like one of them. And so we were all happy. Like, yay. And I was like, oh, I can't wait for y'all to meet Ronnie and you're going to let him. It's like we're still one old big old happy family. We love each other.
For your first child was a daughter?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I have 2 daughters.
How old were you? Was that like soon after you got married?
I was, let's see, I married April 24th, and I had Julie April 1st of the next year.
Oh, okay. So it was quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about when you started having kids? How did you manage to work as much, like to manage family and work?
Well, you just did. And I had a wonderful woman. It was my manager's mother. Her name was Mary. The girls loved her. They called her Grand Mary. Because I didn't want my girls moved from one to the other to this to that. And when I was working a lot, I made sure I was always home for the biggies. anytime the girls had something that was important to them, I was there. And I'll never forget, one of the few people in the industry that I never met, was Frank Sinatra. It was my dream. Well, when my daughter Julie was in the 6th grade, he came to town. And I was invited to a private party. But Julie was also in the statewide 6th grade science fair. So there was no choice. I mean, I went to the science fair, and she won. And I didn't get to meet Mr. Sinatra, but that's okay. I loved him, and he knew I did. But family, and you ask anybody, family's always been first with me. And they know it, and I know it. So that's the important thing.
And then anytime you're like upset with your daughter, you could say, I didn't go to Frank Sinatra because I went to your
That's right.
for the rest of her life.
She'll hear it from now on. That's exactly right.
By the time you were 25, and I forget that you'd already had this very full career.
Yeah.
By the time you were 25, and you had 2 kids, and you were married, and you were working, and you had some kind of medical issues.
I did. I had what is known as a pulmonary embolism. Okay. And that was pretty serious and kept me sidelined for a bit. And then I had a pretty serious kidney surgery. But that's all good. I'm fine. I'm healthy. I think all my major illnesses hit all like at once, and I got rid of them, and I'm fine.
You just took time off. You're
like
not working, gonna get better, and then okay, great. All right, that's not as bad as what I read. I was like, geez, that's okay.
No,
I was more shocked that you were still so young.
Yes. Yeah. No,
25.
Yeah, and the pulmonary embolism was quite serious, but thank God it was okay. And right after that, I did do I've never told anybody this. I did do a tour of Japan, and my doctor and the Japanese doctor stayed in constant contact because I had to go in and check my platelets and do all of that stuff while I was touring. So, you just do what you do.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll stick with the 70s for now, but how had had music and the music industry changed in the 70s? And how were you able to maintain momentum or kind of navigate those
Well, in the
changes?
70s, I was brought a song, much like the ballads that I had recorded in the 60s that were huge, huge hits. And the song was called Nobody Wins, written by Chris Christopherson. We recorded it. It was 1972. And it went to #1 country. All of a sudden, I'm a country singer. Again. So all of a sudden, I have a new career. Rock had changed so drastically, as we know, at that point. So then, here I am with a whole new career in country.
So it wasn't deliberate.
No,
you just
we went in and recorded Nobody Wins, much like we had all the ballads like All Alone Am I and Losing You and Break It To Me Gently and I'm Sorry and I Want to Be Wanted. And we did it the same way, but it was country.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. So, hey, I just want to sing. You tag it anything you want it to be. Just let me be a part of it.
Yeah, because then you were really successful in the 70s and 80s as a country music artist. And in the 80s, you established a residency at Opryland.
I did.
In the 80s?
88, 89, and 90.
Mm-hmm. And in the 90s, that was when you took up songwriting.
A little bit.
Just a little? Okay. Your first songwriting co-writing credit was a song with Kenny Rogers. How did you fall into, or how did you
Well, Michael
that?
McDonald and I wrote that song, and Winona and Kenny recorded it, and it was a huge successful song. Sold a lot of records. And I liked the experience, but I'm not a songwriter.
No, why?
I mean, I think we all have good ideas, and we all have a song somewhere in us. But singing is my love, and to sit down and just write, that I don't do that. I guess I could. I did. I had like we said, Michael McDonald and I had a great record with Winona and Kenny Rogers, and it was fun. But if I had to choose, this is my love right here.
Oh, really?
Just right here.
Is there anything that you want to talk about, or that was kind of like a pivotal moment for you in the 80s or 90s?
I think all of us come to a pivotal moment when we know in our heart that it's time to pull back and say, okay, let's let the kids have it. Let's, go with it, do it. I don't know how many get to that point. And a lot of how I got to that point is I truly found love other than the industry. Because my love for a long, long time was the industry and singing and performing. But I know that to be loved, I don't have to do that anymore. So I think when you get to that point, it's like shackles is the wrong word. That's not the right word. But it all just falls off of you. And you're just like, wow, I'm loved, and I don't have to prove it every 5 minutes. That's a weight that none of us should ever have to carry, no matter what we do. And in this industry, it seems like you have to validate yourself every time you turn around. And it's tough. It's tough to look good all the time, sound good all the time, present yourself good all the time, be perfect all the time, say the right things all the time. And I've just decided that, and decided it a long time ago, I just am who I am. And you either like it or you don't like it. And it took me a little time to get there, because it does all of us. We're all trying to please. It's in our nature. It's in our makeup. But, you know, if you do the best you can every day, it's like I told a little friend of mine. He said, well, I'm just going to grow up and be a ditch digger. And I said, you know what? Then dig the best ditch you can dig. Be proud of that ditch. And then you'll be proud of yourself. So if you can go through life and just know that you've done the best you can do for yourself and for other people that care about you and for your family, who cares what anybody else thinks? Took me a long time to get there. But it's true. Because in the end, you got to please that, got to please him, and you got to please this. And if you can do that, then everything else just kind of falls in place. I don't care what walk of life you're in. It just will. And I am just so fortunate to, I always knew I'd sing, but I never dreamed that I'd still be here today talking to somebody like you and telling my story. And that's what's so great about this industry, too. It's so frustrating because you never know what's around the corner, you know? And it's like Owen said, you're not going to be everybody's darling. You're not. So accept it. Find your place. Be happy with your place. And go. And that's what I've tried to do. And it does my heart good to see people having success that, and you can tell, that really, truly are grateful and that know what it is and that have worked to get there and that know who opened the doors for them or kicked down the doors, be it women, to get to where you are. And that's what I love about the business. When I see people that are grateful for their success and and thankful for people that they rode on the shoulders to get here. And when I don't see it, I'm like, ugh, you know. But I get it. Comes from immaturity a lot of times. But you learn from everything. You just learn from everything if you want to. And if you don't, and you're happy in your little space in life, then good for you. And I always tell the young people that come to me, there are hills and there are valleys in life. In show business, the valleys are really deep and the hills are really high. And if you climb that hill, hooray, 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 enjoy that hill. Because you're more than likely going to live in the valley again. It's okay. Nothing wrong with it. The fun part is getting to that hill, you know? And then you've seen it. And then you're happy. You've done your thing. Walk right on back down to that valley and be happy. Took me a while to learn that. But I always think of what Owen said. You're not always going to be everybody's darling.
Mm.
And how true is that?
Good advice.
Yeah.
How do you think you were able to avoid the kind of pitfalls of fame that so many of your friends and fellow musicians kind of succumbed to? Is there is it like your mother? Is it your support network? Or
Yeah, it's all that.
Okay.
Nobody ever told me I was great. Yeah, you sing. You're pretty good. But nobody ever pampered me and followed me around and said, oh, blah, 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 And that's where I think a lot of the youngsters get sidelined. Let them learn how good they are. You don't have to tell them.
Oh, yeah.
Let them learn it. They'll know. And if you keep telling them they're good when they're not, it's heartbreaking. And that's going to hurt them more than if you just said, hey, you know what? Maybe you ought to consider something else and just do that as fun. And then if they don't, then you've told them. And thank goodness I had a mother that was honest, and I had people around me that were honest, that realized I had talent and nourished that and fed it and all. But they also told me when I did a bad show or hit a bad note too. And we all do it. 'Cause you can't be perfect all the time. You're not supposed to be. And it's too hard to try to be. So don't go in it with that outlook. You're just human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to hit a bad note on stage. You're going to forget lyrics. You're not going to be as pretty as somebody else that's already out there. You've just got to have your own style, your own belief, and go your path. And then 9 times out of 10, you'll probably be a success. But it takes work. Nobody's going to give it to you because everybody's grabbing.
Mm. In the early 2000s, I think it was 2001, you published your autobiography, which I forgot to bring in my suitcase to get my autograph.
Oh, we'll get it before you go.
I'll mail it to you or something to have you sign it and send it back. I was so mad. But what made you decide to write and publish an autobiography? Do you feel a need?
I feel a need to do another one, actually. And not be more truthful. But I can speak a lot more now because a lot of people are not here that it might have hurt. And I would never hurt anyone. But sometimes if you tell the truth, that may not be the right thing when some people that you're telling the truth about are still here. So I probably will write another book.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, it's been like 18 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Golly, I didn't realize it had been that long.
Yeah, so that's plenty.
2000?
Yeah.
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 Wow.
I also wanted to know if you could talk a bit about your faith and the role that has played in your life and career. And you recorded gospel duets with treasured friends. But yeah, just anything about that.
Well, I think anybody that's watching this interview will know when it's turned off about my faith, because I'm here because of that. And, whatever people call their faith, if it's a higher power, if it's a head of lettuce, if it's whatever they call their faith, that's fine with me. I know what I believe, and I wouldn't be here without my beliefs. I couldn't function without my beliefs. And I don't push my beliefs on anyone, nor does anyone push theirs on me. And most of my friends and I differ in our beliefs, but that doesn't stop us from being friends and having a conversation. In fact, every Wednesday morning I have, I guess you'd call it prayer meeting here at my house. And we just have a wonderful time. And a lot of entertainers come, a lot of just friends. And we just have a wonderful woman that comes and speaks the word. And it's just wonderful. And it just keeps me balanced because a lot of the weekends I'm gone. I don't get to go to church. And so that makes me feel fulfilled. But, like I say, everybody believes different as long as you believe in something,
Yep.
And so that, yeah. But, coming from the South and being raised in the church, my uncle was the pastor. And at 3 years old, I was singing in the choir. And so I do have a real background with the church, as most Southerners do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't have food, which a lot of times we didn't, we always knew we could go to the church and get some. And so the church, for a lot of Southerners, was more than just a church, just a worship service. It was supper on the ground, food if you needed it, shelter if you needed it, all the old adages, comfort in your sorrow, all that applied, especially to us deep Southerners who sometimes didn't have a home to go to. And so the church was a big, huge part of our lives.
You mentioned that you're not here on weekends a lot. Are you still performing, or is that like visiting?
No, sometimes I no. If I work, it's usually on the weekends, and I'm hardly working any at all now, and I just love it. There was a time, when I was young, and as my husband says, full of piss and vinegar. Pardon me, I'm going to get you in trouble. Oh, yeah, just hit that road, hit that bus, go do those shows, and just loving it. But now I just kind of, I want to be home. I want to be with my husband. I want to be with my family. I want to see my grandkids grow. I want to have dinner with my girls. I want to be with my friends. Just the regular things everybody wants in life. And I knew it would come to that, and I guess maybe that's why I worked all the time when I was young, because I knew that at one point I just wouldn't be able to or wouldn't want to. And there's a lot of that in why I don't work as much.
I mentioned this before the interview too, but and I want to mention it in the interview because we have some things in common. So you've cited Judy Garland, Edith Piaf, and Frank Sinatra as major vocalist influences. I have an Edith Piaf tattoo. I told you I love Judy Garland. She's like one of my favorite singers, along with you. I like Frank, but as far as women, like
oh yeah, Edith has a commercial on, for the candy. Is it Dove? What is that commercial? I'll have to tell you about it.
Yeah,
oh,
totally.
It's so good.
Because I'll look it up. I don't have cable anymore.
Yeah.
Or anything,
oh, it's so good. I'll get it for you.
Oh, great. Yeah, and Judy Garland years ago had that Coke commercial.
Mhm.
It only aired like 3 times, but it was What'll I Do?
Oh, yeah. And I loved
Right at a Coke
Dinah
commercial.
Washington and Ruth Edding and Ella and,
Yeah.
but Edith Piaf, the little sparrow. Yeah.
But I want. So Judy Garland has been described as your mentor, though. Did you meet? And how was she your mentor, or what did she
I
do for
just
you?
loved her because she was a kid that started out with a very troubled, tragic life. We could all take lessons from that, any of us women in the industry. I got to meet her in Las Vegas. I was 16. And I was following her into the Sahara Hotel. I was so nervous. And we were at poolside one day. And Liza was a little girl. And I asked her, if you had any advice at all to give me, what would that be? And she said, I'll never forget. And I tell this to the mothers that come to me with their children. She said, don't let anyone take your childhood away. And I've never forgotten that. And you could just see the longing and the sorrow in her eyes when she thought about that statement. Because she didn't have one. And everybody in her life took advantage of her. Everybody used her. And it was so tragic.
Yeah.
But she was bigger than life. Little, but bigger than life.
She's little too.
Yes, she's little.
Taller than you, or
Yeah.
the same height?
No, a
Still
little taller
okay.
than me, but little.
Yeah.
Very waifish,
Yeah.
like Edith.
That's what I think is so funny. Their build.
Yeah.
Is so much the same. They're
Very,
so similar. Yeah.
very, like a little waif, like Edith was.
Yeah. Well, I just had to ask because I've never interviewed anyone who has been in the presence of Judy Garland. So that was also pretty cool. And you have a lot of friends, and you've collaborated with just so many legends in the industry. Elvis, we talked about Dolly, Patsy Cline, just to name a few. What are some of your most memorable collaborations or like special friendships that you've maintained over the years?
Well, I maintained them all. Patsy was just, I loved her. She was just in the greatest sense and of all, the greatest broad I've ever met. I loved her. And she was like my sister. I'd go and clomp around in her boots and her clothes that were way too big for me. And we just had the best time. And Dottie West, I loved Dottie West. So proud she's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame this year.
Oh, good.
Oh, I'm so proud. Ella Fitzgerald was one of my dear friends. Dinah Washington. Golly, I've been so blessed to meet so many artists and so many walks of life, starting out so young and getting to meet them and work with them. I mean, I worked with Tony Bennett when I was 11. And Don Rickles and Tony Bennett and I, we played the Chicago Mosque Theater. And during intermission, they taught me how to play penny poker. And we'd sit down and play penny poker during shows, because we usually did 2 or 3 shows a day. And just memories like that I have of these wonderful people. At that point, I had no idea. I just knew they were great, and I loved them, and they were good. But, you know, when you're in the presence of greatness, when you're that little, you don't know. But I did with Garland. I mean, I did. And, you know, just unbelievable. And Ella. Loved Ella. But, yeah, it's... I don't know of another artist that can go from, you know, from Judy to Mahalia Jackson to Miles Davis to Elvis to all walks of music. And I've been fortunate to do that. To Peggy Lee to, gosh, what a ride. When I think about it myself, I'm like, yay. It's great.
Yeah, right. When you sit down and kind of talk from beginning to like present day.
And then, you know, in the early years, I got my start in England, and I'm working with all those artists that had not become known here, like The Who and the Beatles and Tom Jones and Dusty and all of those guys that were not even known here yet. And you just think, golly. So I've been blessed to have quite a run.
What do you do for fun now? We talked a little bit like you're a collector.
I am. I love collecting. I love spending time, of course, with my grandkids and my girls and my family. And I'm just your regular everyday girl when I'm home. You know, I just do things here at the house, or I go have lunch with my friends, and I do stuff here in the industry. Certainly with the Country Music Hall of Fame and the CMA board and things like that, and the Source Awards and stuff like that. I keep busy here.
I want to say this on camera. So you've been inducted into the Georgia Music Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Rockabilly Hall of Fame, Country Music Hall of Fame,
Pop Hall of Fame.
Pop Hall of Fame. Sold over 100 million records.
I think it's close to 200 now.
But more than any other woman in the history of recorded music.
That's what they say.
Yeah, like including Madonna.
Yeah.
It's insane. And you've had what you've described as 4 very distinct careers.
I have.
You've crossed over and worked in multiple genres. So you've answered this a little bit in a couple different questions, but how do you feel about your role in and your contribution to rock history as a whole?
Oh gosh, that's such a hard question.
I know.
I don't know, because I guess John Lennon says I was the first female rocker, so I don't know. Whatever I've contributed, I hope it was good. I hope people took something from it, and, you know, but I think like Elvis and me and Gene Vincent and Carl Perkins and Connie Francis and Fats Domino and Ray Charles and all of us people there at the beginnings, you know, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard, if I didn't say him, we were just making music, doing what we loved. It was a surprise as much as a surprise to us as it was to the audience, that we started rock and roll, as it were.
Yeah.
We were just got lucky enough to be a part of that movement. And I cherish those days. They were so fun, so raw, so unmusical at times. I mean, sometimes, bad notes and all. How exciting was that music? I mean, if you hear a little, I defy anybody if they've got two legs that can move. If you hear a Little Richard song or a Chuck Berry, I could go on, and you don't get up and move, something's wrong with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the music today, I'm not putting it down or anything, but it can get too good. There was a rawness and a freshness and an excitement about those early records that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, everything's just so like commercial
Yeah.
now. Very sleek.
Mm-hmm. It seems like, and my whole deal is today, if I hear something in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, are the kids today going to hear that 50 years from now? I don't think so. That's my barometer.
Yeah.
Because turn on the radio. You're still hearing things from the late 50s to now. And I swear to you, some of them sound as fresh to me as they did when I first heard them.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I lived in that time. It was the most exciting, bad licks, but just good. Made you want to get up and dance, and just you felt it. It pounded you right there, and I don't know. It was just a time in music that was absolutely fabulous. I've been telling my grandson that, and now he's listening to this and that and the other, and the other before he went away to school. I'm sitting down here and wafting down the stairs. I hear Little Richard. I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. He's listening to my music. And so he said, this is pretty good, Nana. I said, yeah. So they get it.
Yeah, it usually happens around like junior, senior year of high school.
Exactly. Exactly.
So he'll be okay.
Yeah, he's going to make it. He's going to make it.
I just have a question that I ask everybody at the end of every interview. Again, this has come up in a few of your answers, so if it's repetitive, we'll just skip it.
Okay.
But what are your thoughts on the visibility of women in rock history in general? Is there a gender discrepancy? Is it not an issue anymore? Has it changed for better or worse? I mean, we talked about.
Okay, it's better.
Okay.
I will say that. But it's always going to be male dominated. We all know that. But the women are creeping through. And talent always wins out, no matter what gender. So to see Nina Simone and Sister Rosetta Tharpe and all get into that Hall of Fame, I'm like, yes! And, it'll happen. But it's always been a male-dominated business, as we know, and it probably always will be. But there are a lot more women out there now doing great, great things, and we just have to keep chugging along and doing our thing, and it'll happen. It absolutely will. I mean, I never thought I'd get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You didn't?
No. I didn't. I never thought I'd get in any Hall of Fame, to be quite frank with you. Now, if there had been a chance for a Hall of Fame getting into, I would have thought, well, I'll get in the Georgia one. I'm from Georgia. They'll put me in. Surely they'll put me in. And they did. But I never dreamed that I would be in the rock, the rockabilly, the pop, and the country.
But that's like an industry thing, and you've sold so many
I know.
records and won so many awards.
I know, but it's also a board of people voting to put you in.
Is it men? Is it like mostly men?
Do
you know
on
any?
some
I
of them,
wondered.
on some of them, a lot of it. But no, the women are, like I said, the women are getting in there, and we're getting, as you can see, we're getting women in, and so we're happy. But there are a lot more to get in. There are a lot more men to get in.
That's true too. I know there's some men who have been, inducted multiple times. I
Exactly.
can think of so many other people.
Yeah, I mean, once you're in, you're in. Do you have to be in there 3 more
I
times?
know, I don't get it.
Come on. But that's
love the Beatles, but like each member has been inducted several times.
Yeah.
They're wonderful, but okay.
I know. And as they should be in there. Every one of them. Every member needs to be in
Except
there.
Ringo. No, I'm just kidding. I love Ringo.
I do too. He's still out there doing it. I love him for that too. But no, the Rock Hall is really legit. It truly is. And they get everybody in eventually. Sometimes they don't get them in when you think they should be, but they get them in.
Okay.
Yeah, you just kind of have to wait.
Okay, 2 more, and that's it. What are you most proud of personally and or professionally?
I'm so proud of a lot of things personally. I'm glad I had a mother that got me to where I am, gave up her life for me, basically, to get me here, to this point. A manager that believed enough in me to give up his life, his money, everything, to get me here to this point. Red Foley, Dick Barstow, but I'm most proud of my husband and my family, my girls, my grandkids. And I give all thanks to God above. And I give all thanks to the fans out there that have allowed me to do what I do and to continue to do what I do and to continue to support me. Because I'll tell you, you can't do it without them. You can't. They choose, and they choose to support you, and they choose to buy your product. And lest you never forget, they're why you're here. So I love my fans, and they know I do. And I appreciate it, and I thank them. And I thank my family for the sacrifices they've made. My mother, for the wonderful, precious woman that she was. And my manager, Dick Barstow, everybody that's ever, I thank you, that's ever taken an interest in who and what I am. That keep my name out there. Because this is what I've always wanted to do, and I've always loved, and I would be singing somewhere. It wouldn't matter to me, because that's what I love to do. I love to sing. Everything that's come with it has just been icing on the cake. And I'm thankful for that. And I thank you.